when you are making a decision, like taking a new job, relocating to a new country, starting a massive education program, or choosing the segment for your startup, ask yourself if this decision is going to alter the future course of my life. If the answer is yes, this is the video for you, because today we're going to talk about this particular situation where the importance of the decision leads you to the decision paralysis, but the decision needs to be quality made, particularly because it's so important. Before you start thinking more quantitatively and analytically about your decision, about different aspects of it, let's talk bigger perspective. Imagine that you are 80 years old and all the things after this decision and after that have already happened, and try to understand how you feel like it. The perspective of 80-year-old is not only the perspective of gains and success and pension savings, though it is. It's usually about the richness of experiences that you have lived. So when you are looking at your decision from the 80-year-old perspective, and you understand that the experiences that you are about to face in your new job, for example, or a new startup, are gonna enrich you as a person, then you need to go for it. So if you have started that startup and maybe it failed, how would you feel about it at the age of 80? Would you regret that you wasted time on this startup instead of spending it with your family, for example? Or would you regret not trying if you decided not to go for it? The regrets is a better driver here, because it is proven that we feel the pain sharper than we do feel the gain of success. But what if you have different options of your decision? For example, if you are offered a job, you can only accept the offer or decline the offer. In many cases, like a startup, there could be many decisions. There could be segment A, there could be segment B, but maybe there are other segments. Maybe there is this great partnership that's gonna alter your business model completely and your thoughts about this startup and this industry completely. The easiest example of the situation where I have several options would be the choice of the project to work on this particular day or week. For example, I know that I have 3 or 4 priority projects, but for this week or this day, I only can take 1 or 2. And sometimes it's a tough call, because one project is more creative and more fun. The other is going to bring more upsides in the near perspective. The other is more strategic. And you're like, what should I choose? When I have too many options, I list all my options that I have in my mind, and I start coming up with my criteria. The criteria could be completely emotional, like if I'm passionate about this project. The criteria could be completely rational, like the amount of money, like literally state the amount of money I could earn from that project, or the amount of money I need to spend on that project. And I would throw all the criteria in the mix. For example, the money, the passion, and maybe how difficult this project is. This is an example I found in my previous notebook. It could look like this. So these are the projects and these are the criteria. And what you need to understand here is that you need to think about both the pain and the gain. So when we are talking about the potential benefits, the potential earnings, the salary in a job, we are talking about the gains. But what you also need to think about is the resources, because sometimes the project with the highest upside is going to take the most amount of time, the most amount of money, and also the most amount of uncertainty. Sometimes you might notice a pattern, like there is one project that takes 3 hours, and it produces a potential deal of $1,000. And there is this other project that takes 20 hours, and the upside from it is also $1,000. Then this is what this exercise is good for. Sometimes you include a project because you're passionate about it, but it's completely rational to choose the project with the 3 hours for $1,000 versus the project with 20 hours for $1,000. Sometimes you also notice the conflict between the difficulty and the upside. So maybe it's difficult for you emotionally, but the upside is huge. This means that you make a trade-off with yourself. At first, when you start working on your list, you notice that it's completely unstructured. But once you dig deeper, you start seeing the patterns. Some of the criteria cancel out. For example, one job might have better working hours, but you need to go to the office, and the total hours you spend with the commute on those two jobs is identical, meaning that the time is not an option. You can cancel out this criteria completely. Sometimes you can understand that two criteria are interdependent. For example, the creativity of the project might be dependent on the number of people involved, or be the opposite of it. For example, if a job is creative, you work alone. If it involves other people, you're meant to do what they tell you because they're your clients or boss. So meaning that you have to choose between creativity and working with other people. And again, you have to weigh this in. The next approach you could use for making a decision is the decision tree. It's often used to decompose consulting projects into their components to find the root cause of the problems in a business case. But you could decompose your life into the same. In business, you usually start with revenue and costs. In your life decision, for example, about a job, you can also start with revenue and costs, but it could be something more general, like the resources you need and the outcomes. And then you can split your resources into, for example, time, money, skills, and maybe emotional resources. And you could split your outcomes again into money, into something emotional, into maybe the network, and maybe something else that you like. For example, a nice place to live, a nice surroundings, whatever. With this tree approach, each of your projects can go through that tree structure, and you can assign points, for example, based on how good a project is. For example, one job can score a 10 out of 10 on money, 5 out of 10 on environment, and 7 out of 10 being emotionally rewarding. For example, it's a corporate job with nice pay, good colleagues, but sometimes toxic culture and hours. And the other job could score, 7 out of 10 on money, 10 out of 10 on surroundings, and 10 out of 10 the emotional side. For example, this is a startup with cool culture, but it cannot pay you a lot of money. And you can kind of sum all those up and compare this versus that and listen to your feelings. Because this is not science. This decision making for your personal self is not science. And if you feel like 25 points versus 27 points are kind of not the same points, this feeling about it is the key of your understanding of your own self and of your own relationship with this problem. And to remain on the quantitative side, what I do, I usually assign a double value to the criteria that is important to me. For example, if I understand that the emotional side is important, I say that the maximum on it is not 10 but 20, because it's my scale, I can do anything to it. What I would also advise for a long-term decision, particularly for a risky decision like a startup, is identifying and quantify the potential upside. And this really reminds me of the total available market approach for the startups, for the customer segments. If you haven't watched my video about customer segments, choosing the better one, you should really watch it. The idea there was that if one segment is $10 million and the other is $1 billion, you should definitely go into the $1 billion segment because there is just more fish in the pond. And here is the same. If you understand that your startup only has an upside of $10 million, it's probably not a startup. It's mostly a bootstrapped like business model, and maybe you should go for it. But if it's $10 million with a probability of 1%, it's not even much money in there. So if you are doing it to startups, you can compare potential valuation or revenue or what your share could amount to in terms of money. Because your share is likely going to be diluted, and by the time of the IPO, you would probably have, 5% of the company. For example, it should be interesting to Google to understand how much the early founders got on their share when they exited. A good example would be Kevin Systrom from Instagram, because he's no longer in the company and he's 5+ years not in the company. It would be interesting to know how much he got. For international founders, by the way, an interesting example would be Eduardo Saverin, the early founder of Facebook, who got into a misunderstanding and conflict with Mark Zuckerberg. Watch the movie Social Network about it. Eduardo was also from Brazil, I believe, and he wanted to go back, and he was heavily taxed on his share. And again, if I find the number, I'll post it here. It's interesting to know how much he got. But if your venture is something not purely quantitative, like relocating to a new country, you should pile up all the resources, like money, like good surrounding, like new network, the comfort, the security of your environment, the social security system, and everything. And when you pile those up, you can schedule them according to your tree structure boxes, and again calculate the points for each decision. If those detailed calculations are too annoying, you found yourself even more deep into that decision and not knowing what to do, a final method I would advise is flipping a coin. Turkish lira. What you need to do is you assign one side of the coin to one decision, the other to the other. You flip it in your hands like this, and then you drop it. I can do it for you. Yeah. The idea is not to do what the coin just told you to do. The idea is to listen to yourself, how you feel about that certain decision you would kind of need to do. If you feel like, oh no, then you probably need to go with the other decision, because that was your true emotion right there. And you do not need that tree-like structure or anything. Your emotional reaction, sometimes even your bodily reaction, tells you more about how you feel about the idea. Because your brain structure is mostly subconscious and has a very good tie to your body structures, to hormones, reactions like sweating, muscle tightening, and your body has already told you what you need to be doing. Hope this video helped and was fun. Tell me if I need to make more of those personal system videos. Subscribe to this channel if you're not, and I'm going to be posting more of these videos about startups and decision making soon.